is it important for us to be living and trying to create a life that we want to live, that we're excited to live? Now, I think two things I want us to think about as we start thinking about this. Number one, if we're not living a life that we've been created uniquely to live, and what I mean by that is all of us, when I say that, all of us have different skills, different talents, different passions. All of us have a different wiring that we are able, in a skill set that we're able to bring to the table, right? So all of us get to express that in life, and that looks different for each and every one of us, right? Some of us have the mind of an engineer, and we have an engineer job, and we show it, and we use our talents and our skills in that way. Some of us are more creative and have an artistic mind and may draw or paint or do music or whatever the case may be. But all of us have different expressions. We've all been gifted. We all have a talent set of things that we can bring and contribute to the world. And it is important for us to figure out what that is so that we can start contributing in those ways. And here's what happens if we don't. Woo, here is what happens if we do not do that, right? Because we have the option not to do that. And here's what would happen if we don't do that. Number one, we get bored. We get bored. Now, Brené Brown has a definition of boredom that I really like, so I'm actually going to read it for us right here. And it says this: boredom is the uncomfortable state of wanting to engage in satisfying activity, but being unable to do it. Eek. That was a mouthful right there. I'm going to read that one more. I'm going to read, just in case you missed that. I want you to digest that real quick. I'm going to pause. Boredom is the uncomfortable state of wanting to engage in satisfying activity, but being unable to do it. You see, sometimes being bored can be good for us, right? Sometimes being bored can be good for us, especially nowadays. We live in such a world where it's just like, we can be distracted by so many things. There's so many things that can keep our attention. So sometimes it's good for us to be bored, actually, so that we can actually be creative. We can start to think about other things. Like boredom can actually be a gateway to creativity. But then other times, boredom, the lack of stimulation, the lack of satisfaction can lead us astray, right? Boredom can lead us on a path that we don't want to be in. Boredom can lead us on a path where we're trying to find satisfaction out of other things just to try to fill the gap or fill that satisfaction loop, because we're not doing what we should be doing, right? So if we find ourselves living a life where we're just not using our skills, our talents, I believe, if we're not using those things in a way that we feel like is meaningful for us, I feel like we are prone to get bored. And when we're prone to get bored, we're prone to wander, right? We're prone to wander. So one of the reasons why this is so important is because we want to live a life that is intentional and not live a life of just wandering. Why, Josh? Why? I just want to wander. It's okay. I'm good with wandering. Well, I think when we wander, we can, it will lead us sometimes to this next feeling. And it's this feeling, number two, of getting stuck. Right? It's this feeling of getting stuck. As we wander sometimes aimlessly, bored, we can wander into circumstances that may not even be for us. We could find ourselves in trouble sometimes, just wander into things that may not be for us. But then sometimes we could just wander our way into feeling stuck and being somewhere, going so far going so far down a road, down a pathway where we're just like, where and why am I here and how did I get here? Right. I think often, for those of you who don't know, I am a Christian, and there's a Bible story actually, which whether or not you subscribe to the Bible, don't subscribe to the Bible, I think it's very interesting. But there's a Bible story of this person named David, right? And David was a king, and King David. And at this time, David, there was this. It tells a story where David was supposed to be at war, right? And instead of being at war, David was home. And David was home, and while David was home, he was looking out of his window and he's seen this lady bathing, and David winds up getting into some trouble, and his story goes in a whole other path just because he was somewhere that he wasn't supposed to be. He was supposed to be on the battlefield, but he was at home, and he was just wandering, and he winded up wandering into something that was never meant for him, right? So I think that's just the importance of why we want to be trying to create a life that we actually want to live, a life that is designed around our talents and our skills and the things that we're actually good at and the things that we actually want, what we actually not want, not what others want for us, right? Because we're going to fight that feeling of feeling bored, and then we're going to fight that feeling of feeling stuck, right? And then when we feel stuck, it just feels like, man, we don't know what to do next. I think emotions that come right after that, especially for me, when I feel stuck, I feel lost. I feel confused. I feel sad. There are just a lot of emotions that come with that. So I am curious about what it looks like for us to be living a life that is more suited to what we are wired to do. I'm curious what it looks like. I'm curious if on the other side of that, will that bring more joy? Will that bring more happiness? And we know that happiness is an emotion that we're supposed to feel all the time, but will that help us to navigate when life gets hard? Will us at least being and doing what we're wired to be doing give us the sense of peace and joy to just be able to navigate the hard that life is going to inevitably throw at us?